At my wedding, my mom smiled and said, "We're passing the car her parents gave you over to your brother." My brother chuckled and added, "Relax, it's just a car." "Hi, my name's Nathan Mark, and I'm 29. The band moved from the full strings of our first dance into something you could breathe in. Glasses chimed, someone's uncle laughed too loudly. Fairy lights made soft halos onto everyone's hair. I could taste frosting from the cake a little while ago on my thumb, the way sugar stays in the air when a moment tries to tell you it's perfect. And then, my mother smiled. It was the smile I grew up inside of, soft, bright, beautifully rehearsed, a pageant smile, a Sunday smile, the kind that tells the room that everything is okay, even when the furniture is already on fire in the next room. Welcome to Reddit Stories Rewind. Please watch this video all the way to the end for some very valuable insights. She leaned in close enough for her perfume's sweet breath to remove the last of the cake. "We're passing the car your wife's parents gifted you to your brother," she said, a sentence spoken like a favor as she had reorganized the pantry and found a home for something I obviously wasn't using right. Next to her, my brother John tilted his head. The studs on his cufflinks winked like private jokes. "Relax," he said, light and polished. "It's just a car." I didn't look at John. I looked at my mother's teeth placed in that perfect line. Right on time, my father drifted closer, as if formality required a witness. Behind them, my wife, Sarah, caught my eye, her brows lifting just a little. She didn't move. She didn't have to. We had already decided who we were. There's a special silence that comes at weddings. Not the kind made by empty rooms, but the kind that folds itself over music, pushes on laughter, freezes smiles while they crinkle. That silence came now and smoothed everything flat. John's voice cut through it. "It's honestly safer for me," he added. "Man, my old car is tragic." He laughed at his own line. Of course he did. Sarah's mother and father had given us the car at the rehearsal dinner. Clean, used, reliable, not flashy. They'd handed me the title with both hands, like a blessing. "You built this together." My new father-in-law said, "Here's something that helps you move forward." The title was in my name, a welcome into their family that felt like trust, not ownership. Maybe that was the problem. I learned to see problems before they had names. When we were kids, John got the bigger room. I got the explanation. "He's younger, sweetie, he needs more space." When he spilled paint thinner on my homework table and it ruined the varnish completely, Mom said, "You should have kept your school stuff in your room." John borrowed my jackets and returned them stained. I got a speech about sharing gracefully. He wrecked his first car. The weather was blamed. I worked 3 warehouse Christmases to buy my first one. The lesson was that I was dependable. The pattern was clear. John asked sweetly, smiled gently, and when that didn't work, my parents reached for their toolkit. Excuses, explanations, a chorus of "he's sensitive and you're the resilient one." I was the older brother, the well-trained adult who could wait, could give in, could hand things over without making a scene. I used to wear resilient like an honor. By 29, it felt more like a bell rope other people pulled when they wanted something. Sarah's hand brushed my elbow. Just a tap, a question. I answered without looking at her. I slipped my fingers into my jacket and felt the weight of the slim, flat envelope inside. Paper shouldn't feel heavy. This did. My mother's smile brightened by a watt. "We told him earlier," she said, saying the words brightly like we were revealing a surprise vacation. "He's had such bad luck with cars, and we thought, well, this would be more useful with him. You two can get by with one for now," she said. "Manage." Like a ribbon she was tying for me. I took a breath that tasted like glass. "You're giving away our wedding gift," I said. Not loud, not accusing, a sentence that wanted only to be seen. Mom's smile barely trembled. "Don't make this a thing, Nathan. It's just a car." "Your envelope was empty," I heard myself say. "We took it as a symbolic gift." I didn't plan the line. I think the line planned me. Across from me, John's lips parted, delighted outrage coloring his cheeks. "Wow," he said, half laughing like he was above it and beneath it at once. "You really think you're tough now." Somewhere near the cake, a phone camera lifted as if moved by prayer. I leaned towards Sarah and whispered, "Give me the envelope." She didn't ask which one. She didn't ask if I was sure. She slid the envelope out of my inside pocket with practiced ease and placed it in my palm, palm to palm like a vow. My father reached for it before my mother could, curiosity making a sharp line in his brow. John leaned in, eyes hungry. They opened it like it might be a check big enough to bend light. They didn't expect the legal kind of paper. Mom's eyes flicked over the page, reading too fast to hide her eagerness. The practiced smile didn't crack, it thinned. John read over her shoulder and lost his smirk before the second paragraph. Dad pinched the top of the page, scanning like the words might rewrite themselves out of embarrassment. "What is this?" he muttered. I didn't make them wait. "A notarized declaration," I said, my voice just steady enough to carry. "Executed 2 weeks ago, it states that all wedding gifts, including the vehicle titled in my name, cannot be sold, gifted, or transferred without my written, notarized consent. Any attempt to reassign it will trigger an automatic legal review and restrict any future inheritance arrangements from Sarah's side." The music didn't so much stop as fade. "You can't be serious," John said, a thin edge of panic sharpening his vowels. "You're threatening us at your own wedding." "You made a public claim," I answered. "I'm giving a public boundary." Dad let out a laugh with no humor inside it. "This is petty, Nathan. Over the top. It's a car, not a child." "No," I said. "It's the principle. It's every principle you taught me that only applied when John didn't want something." Mom slid the paper back into the envelope like it had insulted her manicure. "We're family," she hissed softly. "You don't treat us like criminals." "You went into our garage last night," I said, the line as quiet as a blade. "You took photos of the car and posted them." John blinked slow like a deer deciding whether the world was real. "It was a joke," he said. "Symbolic." "Symbolic of what?" Sarah asked, the first word she'd offered, her tone glass calm. "That your presence is the gift." A gasp came softly from someone's aunt. Mom's smile finally cracked. I could feel a tremor begin in my legs, the aftershock of choosing yourself in public. It should have felt like an earthquake. It felt like stepping onto a dock after a long boat ride. Unsteady, but under it was the blessed promise of solid wood. John squared his shoulders. "You've always been like this," he said, finding his footing in accusation. "Both of you self-righteous." I turned to him fully. I didn't raise my voice. "You've coasted on apologies I had to make. You've taken consequences like coats other people could wear. You call it family. I call it access." "Enough," Dad said, trying to retake the room. "This is a wedding." "And this," I said, "is the last day I pretend this doesn't happen." Sarah's fingers threaded through mine. 1, 2, 3, count off. The band waited. The guests waited. The old script waited for me to obey it. I didn't. Stick with this story to the very end on Reddit Stories Rewind. You won't want to miss the powerful outcome. Remember to subscribe, like, and share. I pulled out a second envelope and gripped it between 2 fingers. John's name was written on the front. He stared like it burned. Mom went to grab it, but I tugged it back half an inch. A boundary made clear. "This one is real, not symbolic," I said gently. "Consider it documentation." Behind us, the cake stood somewhere far away. A cork popped with a decently cheerful sound. "Dance," Sarah said to the band softly, like a dare. The drummer lifted his sticks. The singer looked at me as if I were the conductor. I nodded once. The music rose. The room inhaled. John's mouth opened around a fresh argument, and the bass line swallowed it. We turned, Sarah and I, into the song. My mother's smile finally fell off her face. John's glittering cufflinks stopped winking. The envelope waited in my hand like a truth with edges. I pressed it into my father's palm as we passed him on the floor. "Help isn't theft," I said, "and love isn't access." We danced, not for show, for reclamation. At the edge of my vision, I saw my mother staring, trying to make a new smile that would fit what the room had become. I hoped for once it wouldn't come. The music was still playing when the whispers started. I could feel them ripple through the tables like the slow roll of a tide. Cousins muttering,
an aunt pretending to fix her napkin while her phone camera shook, one of my mother's friends forming the word drama behind her champagne flute. That's the thing about families like mine. They love an audience almost as much as they hate accountability. My mother stood frozen beside the cake table, her face showing politeness, but her eyes narrow and shaking. John kept trying to laugh it off, a brittle, high-pitched sound that didn't belong to his usual charm. He still thought he could fix the scene. "Seriously, Nathan," he said, his voice cracking with disbelief. "You can't be doing this over a car." Sarah squeezed my hand, but I didn't look at her. "This isn't about a car," I said quietly. "It's about everything that was ever mine turning into his." John let out a scoff, his tone rising. "Oh my God, are we really gonna talk about high school right now? You're married, move on." "High school was practice," I said. "You took my room, my clothes, my things. This was just your graduation project." The room trembled under the weight of awkward laughter. Someone turned the music down. It wasn't quiet anymore. It was tense. Mom's voice sliced through it. "We're not doing this here. Nathan, stop embarrassing yourself." "Myself?" I repeated, blinking. "You announced you were giving away my wedding gift in public. That's not embarrassment, Mom. That's theft with courtesy." Dad ran a hand through his thinning hair, muttering to her, "Just let it go." But he wasn't looking at her. He was looking at me, the way someone stares at a stranger who knows too much. John's expression flickered with something I'd seen all my life, panic hidden under privilege. He leaned in, trying to soften it. "Nathan, you know I'm struggling, right? My old car is basically dead and your new one is just sitting there." There it was, the justification, the quiet entitlement dressed up as need. Sarah finally spoke, voice even. "We're not running a donation program, John." His face flushed. "Easy for you to say, Mrs. Moneybags, you married up." Sarah's jaw tightened, but before she could answer, I stepped in. "You mean she married someone who doesn't cave anymore?" John blinked. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means the free ride is over." A murmur swept across the tables. My mother's hand trembled as she tried to reclaim the narrative. "Everyone calm down," she said, her voice quivering with false grace. "This has gone far enough." But I wasn't done. "Mom," I said softly, "did you know John went into our garage last night?" That froze her in the middle of a breath. "He took photos of the car, posted them, captioned it, finally got a ride that fits me." Mom's lips parted. Dad frowned. John's hand jerked toward his phone like he could somehow delete the evidence retroactively. "How? How did you?" he stammered. "Security footage," I said, keeping my tone flat. "And your post had a geotag." A soft gasp scattered from the guests. John turned scarlet. "You're stalking me now." "No," Sarah said. "We just check who tries to open our garage door at midnight." The room's glare shifted. The fake warmth evaporated. All that was left was truth, heavy and unfiltered. This is just the start. Watch the full video on Reddit Stories Rewind to see how it all ends. Please subscribe, like, and share.
I put my hand into my jacket again. The motion alone was enough to make my mother's head jerk towards me. She thought it was another envelope, another blow, and it was. "This," I said, holding up a fresh sheet of paper, "is a notice of unauthorized access and misuse of personal property. We plan to send it quietly, but since this conversation is now public—" John's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Mom grabbed the paper out of my hand, looking it over. "You're ridiculous," she said sharply. "This is family business, not something you bring lawyers into." "Family business," I repeated, voice breaking into a shaky laugh. "That's what you said when he maxed my debit card at 17, when he crashed the car Grandpa helped me buy, when he sold my old laptop and called it borrowing. Every single time you turn it into family business." My father's voice cut in, sharp as gravel. "You're making a fool of yourself. Sit down." I turned to him, finally meeting his eyes. "I've been sitting down for 29 years, Dad. You just never noticed." The silence that followed was a living thing, dense, wet, suffocating. Sarah's voice broke it, steady and clear. We'd like it if no one touches our property again. That includes our car, our house, or anything tied to my family's name." John's eyes flared. "Your family's name. So that's what this is about. Status." "No," she said simply. "Respect." Mom tried one last time to save her dignity. "We raised you to be kind, Nathan, to be generous." "You raised me to give," I said, "and you taught John to take." That landed like thunder. For a second, even the fairy lights seemed to flicker. John stepped forward, trembling. "You really think you're better than me now?" "No," I said quietly, "just done letting you decide what I owe." His lower lip quivered. "You're heartless." "Then maybe you should stop trying to find my pulse in my bank account." A few guests gasped. One of Sarah's uncles clapped quietly like a man who knew the satisfaction of boundaries long overdue. Mom's voice was almost pleading now. "We're family. We can fix this later." "No," I said. "Later is how you kept me small." John tried to laugh again, but the sound cracked halfway through. "You're not perfect either, Nathan." "Never said I was," I replied, "but at least I'm not pretending theft is love." His eyes brimmed with frustrated tears. "You'll regret this." "I already did," I said, "for 29 years. And with that, I turned away. Sarah took my hand, guided me back to the dance floor. The song had shifted into something slow, almost cinematic. We didn't speak as we started moving again. Around us, the guests pretended to eat, pretended to chat, pretended not to stare. When the song ended, we bowed slightly to the band, as if nothing had happened, but everyone knew everything had. That night after the reception, we drove home in the same car they tried to take, windows down, wind wild, silence louder than any argument. When we pulled into our driveway, Sarah turned off the engine and said quietly, "You okay?" I stared at the house, the quiet street, the empty night. "I'm more than okay," I said. "I'm finally done." She smiled, reaching for my hand. "Good, because something tells me your family isn't." She was right. The next morning, they proved it. The morning after the wedding felt like waking up in someone else's house. The suit hung over the chair. The boutonniere had wilted in its glass. The silence in our kitchen wasn't peaceful, it was watchful. Sarah brewed coffee while I scrolled my phone, half asleep, half bracing. I shouldn't have looked, but curiosity is a stubborn animal. The first post hit like static in my chest. John Harper. "Some people value money more than family. Hope it's worth it." 53 likes, 3 heart emojis, 1 comment from Mom. "Letting go is painful, but sometimes necessary. Still praying for those who forget where they came from." I stared at it until the screen dimmed. "Don't," Sarah said softly. "Don't read it again." "I'm not," I lied. She slid a mug toward me. "He's trying to rewrite the story before it hardens." She was right. That's how my family worked. Whoever spoke first got to define what happened. The truth was just whatever sounded polite enough to pass around for brunch. But this time, the story was ours. We had planned to leave for our honeymoon that morning, drive up the coast in our car, the one they tried to claim. We didn't even have a destination, just a map marked with places we'd never been. As I packed, another notification pinged. This time it was worse, a GoFundMe link. Title, "Vehicle Emergency Caused by Betrayal." Goal, $8,000. Organizer, John Harper. The description was written in his flowery, self-victimizing tone. "My brother and his wife blindsided me on their wedding day. I lost access to the car that was promised to me, and now I have no way to get to work. I'm just trying to rebuild. Every little bit helps." 2 donors, $18 raised. One name stood out, Karma, $10. Sarah burst out laughing. "Karma donated. You can't make this up." I took a screenshot and closed the app. He'll delete it when he realizes people aren't buying the act. She looked at me. "And when he does, he'll find another way to play the victim." I said, "He always does." The drive started quiet, the kind of quiet that felt deserved. We rolled past city signs and into stretches of road that hummed like freedom. No messages, no expectations, just wind and cheap gas station snacks. At one rest stop, I caught my reflection in the car window. No tuxedo, tie loosened. I was still tired but alive. Sarah followed my gaze. "You look peaceful," she said. "I feel unhooked," I admitted.
like I'd been holding my breath for a decade and finally remembered how to inhale. She smiled. Boundaries will do that. We didn't talk much after that. We didn't need to. Every mile between us and my parents felt like a wall I should have built years ago. 3 days later, while sitting by a lake with our feet in the water, my phone buzzed again. A long message from Mom. "You're still angry. This is too far. Family helps family. That's how we raised you." I stared at it for a minute, the words like a net trying to pull me back into the same role I'd finally escaped. Then I replied with a photo. It wasn't of us smiling or the wedding or the car. It was a single picture of the notarized letter. Caption, "Help isn't theft." I blocked her afterward, not out of hate, but out of habit breaking. Back home, we unpacked slowly, the air in our house feeling different, lighter, sharper. The group chats were quiet. My cousin's messages dried up. The family thread that once pinged daily, good mornings, funny memes, who's cooking Sunday dinner, was dead. It didn't hurt the way I thought it would. It felt earned. 2 weeks passed before the next ripple. A cousin texted, "You guys okay? Uncle Mark said there was a fight at the wedding." "Not a fight," I replied. "A boundary?" No response, just the 3 dots that blinked for a while then disappeared. The silence was its own kind of peace. Sarah and I went back to work. We stopped explaining ourselves. We started new traditions, slow Sunday breakfasts, evening drives, music with no lyrics. Sometimes I'd see John's name pop up on suggested posts, his curated happiness shining like glass, transparent and fragile. I didn't click anymore. One evening, while sorting through the wedding photos, I found one that no one else had noticed. It wasn't staged, wasn't smiling, wasn't perfect. It was taken seconds after the confrontation. Mom's face angry, John's mouth half open, my expression unreadable. Sarah beside me, calm and solid. A friend must have snapped it by accident. I printed it and tucked it into the back of a photo frame behind all the beautiful pictures, because perfection is a lie, but truth, even when it hurts, is worth keeping. I realized that was my favorite photo of the entire night, because it was real.
The peace lasted about 3 weeks. Then came the guilt. Not theirs, mine. It started in small doses, like a cough that wouldn't go away. Every quiet morning felt slightly visited by that internal voice I'd been trained to obey. You're the problem if they're upset. That's what being the resilient one does. It rewires you to feel guilty for surviving. Sarah noticed before I did. "You've been staring at that same mug for 10 minutes, she said one morning. "What's going on in your head?" I shrugged. "Just detoxing, I guess." She tilted her head. "Detoxing?" "Yeah." I forced a smile from obligation. She nodded slowly. "Then let's keep going." That afternoon, we did something meaningful. Ordinary to outsiders, life-changing to me. We changed the locks. The old keys clattered into the trash with a sound that felt final. New keypad, new code. No more emergency contacts listed under Mom or Dad. For years, I'd given them access, in literal and emotional ways. Spare key under the flower pot, credit card, auto pay, family group passwords. I told myself it was love. Really, it was fear. That day, I let go of all of it. 3 therapy sessions later, I said something out loud that surprised even me. "I'm not grieving, I'm detoxing." My therapist smiled softly. "Tell me more about that." "I thought I missed them," I said, "but I think I just missed being predictable." Their version of me was easy, the fixer, the forgiver, the one who never said no. Letting that version die feels selfish, but it's not. It's self-respect, she said. That word hit hard. Respect. Something I'd handed out like napkins. By the 4th session, I was ready to make it practical. I deleted the old family emergency contacts from my phone. Numbers that always rang for financial rescues, never birthdays. I replaced my mom's number with my therapist's in my speed dial list. It wasn't revenge, it was logic. Then I walked over to the fridge and took off the family photos one by one. Most of them were fake smiles anyway, posed peace. I left one, just one, the candid photo from the wedding, the one taken seconds after the truth detonated. Mom mid-frown, John stunned, me holding the envelope, Sarah steady beside me.
It wasn't a happy photo, but it was real, and that's all I wanted now. People started testing the silence soon after. My aunt sent a "how's married life" text that quickly changed into, "You know your mother's heartbroken, right?" A cousin messaged, "Don't you think it's time to forgive? She's your mom." But forgiveness isn't a switch you flip for public comfort. It's a boundary you reinforce for private peace. I didn't respond to most messages. When I did, I kept it simple. Forgiveness isn't owed. Respect is. The replies stopped coming. One afternoon, Sarah found me sitting on the porch, staring at the horizon. "Regretting it?" she asked. I shook my head. "No, just noticing the quiet." She sat beside me. "It's weird at first, huh? The silence?" "It's not the silence, Sarah," I said. "It's the absence of noise I thought was love." She didn't answer. She just held my hand until the sun went down. A week later, I got a missed call from my dad. No voicemail, just the ghost of his number blinking on my screen like a test. I didn't call back, because calling back meant stepping onto the same stage they'd burned down. The next day, I found a letter slipped under our door. No return address. Inside was a printed photo from my childhood. John and me on the porch, arms around each other, grinning like we were equals. Written on the back was Mom's handwriting. "Don't let him erase your memories." For a second, my throat tightened. Then I realized what she'd done. Even her nostalgia was a manipulation, a plea to rewrite the narrative back into her control. I tore the photo in half, not out of rage, but reclamation. I didn't need to erase my memories. I just needed to stop pretending they were safe with her. The next morning, I made breakfast. Coffee, toast, sunlight. I unlocked my door without flinching, turned on music without preparing for someone to judge the volume. Freedom doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it's just the quiet click of a new lock. A full year passed before the next message arrived. By then, the air in our house felt different, still calm, honest. The walls didn't echo with anxiety anymore. Every inch of space finally felt mine. Sarah and I had built small rituals. Friday takeout nights, Saturday morning drives, late night laughter that didn't have to be whispered, the kind of life that doesn't need to be defended. Our anniversary came quietly. We didn't plan a big trip, we just decided to take the same car, our car, and drive until the coast appeared. The same vehicle that started a war now carried us into peace. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. The sky was a watercolor that evening, lavender fading into gold. We parked near a cliff overlooking the ocean, the sound of waves, rough but honest. Sarah leaned against the hood, looking out. "Remember when you said you'd never dance again after that wedding?" I laughed. "Yeah, turns out I was wrong about a lot of things." "Like what?" she asked. She was thinking I needed them to feel whole. She smiled. "You were whole the day you said no. The rest was just cleanup." We stayed there until the sun went down, headlights blending with the last bit of daylight. It felt symbolic, leaving the past in shadow, driving into something steady. When we got home, there was an envelope in the mailbox. No return address, but I knew that handwriting. My stomach didn't twist this time. It just settled. Inside was a single card, cream paper, gold edges, her handwriting. "We miss you. We love you. Come back when you're ready to be part of the family again." I stared at it for a long time, long enough for the ink to stop feeling like a threat. There was a time that kind of message would have broken me open, sent me spiraling into guilt, into apology, into another cycle of surrender. But now I could see it for what it was, an invitation not to reconnect, but to regress. Sarah walked up behind me, reading over my shoulder. She didn't have to say a word. I tore the card in half. The sound was quiet, almost polite. Then I dropped the pieces into the trash. People think closure comes from reconciliation. It doesn't. It comes from refusal. Refusing to step back into rooms that once required you to shrink. That night, I took one last walk around the house. Barefoot on the cold floor, lights dimmed low. Every corner whispered something different. Memory and hurt and healing. I stopped by the fridge. That single photo was still there. The candid one from the wedding. Mom mid-frown. John in disbelief. Me holding the envelope like a shield. Sarah steady beside me. I smiled at it, not out of triumph, but gratitude, because that was the moment everything finally made sense. Breaking cycles isn't dramatic, it's deliberate. It's the moment you stop needing an apology to feel free. For our second anniversary, we took another drive. Same car, same coast, same wind tearing through our laughter. No audience, no judgment, no invisible debts. Sarah rolled the windows down and asked, "You ever think you'll talk to them again?" I thought about it for a while. Then I said, "Maybe, but not like before, not as their version of me." She nodded. "You don't miss them?" I smiled faintly. "I don't miss being the one they used." We drove in silence after that. Not the heavy kind, but the earned kind. The kind you only get after a war that finally ends. When we got back home, I unlocked the door without hesitation, turned off the alarm, and walked straight to the kitchen. The same lock they once had keys to. The same house that no longer belonged to them. The same man who, for the first time, felt safe in his own name. I used to think boundaries meant losing family. Now I know boundaries define family, the real kind. And in that quiet, sunlit kitchen, I realized something simple. I didn't want their version of family anymore. I wanted peace, and I had it. Every time I start the car, that's mine. Every time I unlock the door without bracing. Every time I wake beside someone who loves me without a price tag. That's family. That's freedom. What do you think about this story? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching this powerful journey on Reddit Rewind. For more real-life stories that teach us about boundaries and self-respect, make sure you watch the video to the very end. Subscribe, hit the like button, and share this with someone who needs to hear it.